بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. So alhamdulillah, we are into the last third of Ramadan, and just like that 20 days have passed from the beginning of this sacred month, the ninth month of the Hijri calendar, the month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the month of mercy, the month of forgiveness, and the month of emancipation and liberation from the gates of hell. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those that avail themselves of Allah's mercy and receive it, and of His ghufran, of His forgiveness, and also of His emancipation and liberation. And we have been going over some of the verses corresponding to each of the 30 parts that correspond to the nights of Ramadan. So we're in our 21st night, and I remind myself and everyone else, the Prophet ﷺ said for us to seek out Laylatul Qadr, the night of power, within the last 10 nights of Ramadan, and specifically the last 10 odd nights. So if we had started fasting on the Friday, then tonight will represent the 21st night of Ramadan. So what the first night that we should be looking for Laylatul Qadr, inshallah. So we should have mentioned this earlier, but the easiest thing is make intention every night in Ramadan as Laylatul Qadr. So when you pray your Isha, you pray your Taraweeh, or your Qiyam, whatever it might be, make the intention that you're also seeking out Laylatul Qadr. So من قام ليلة القدر إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه ومن قام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Whoever stands the night of Laylatul Qadr إيمانا واحتسابا, Iman and ihtisab al-ajr عند Allah, and of accounting for the reward only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then all of his sins, previous sins, will be forgiven, and the same for the one who stands in Ramadan. جعل الله كذلك. So we are into the 21st juz, and we're going to be looking at Surah Luqman al-Hakim alayhi salam, and specifically beginning with verse 12, when we are told about Sayyidina Luqman al-Hakim, and قوله عز وجل بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد آتينا لقمان الحكمة أن اشكر لله ومن يشكر فإنما يشكر لنفسه ومن كفر فإن الله غني حميد وإذ قال لقمان لابنه وهو يعظه يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. صدق الله العظيم. So Luqman alayhi salam mentions in the Tafseer that his full name was Luqman ibn Ba'ura, and he was from Bani Israel, from the tribes of Israel. And when we say Bani Israel, it means the 12 tribes that came from Israel, which is another name for Sayyidina Yaqub, who was the son of Ishaq, who was the son of Ibrahim. So Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham, alayhim salam. And then Ismail was also the son of Abraham, but from there came not Bani Israel, but came Al-Arab, Al-Adnaniyun, Wal-Qahtaniyun. So the two major sets of Arabs came from the progeny of Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam. But they are all Anbiya, they are all prophets and messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes you find in the Arab world this kind of sort of looking at Ishaq and Yaqub as somehow being the Jewish prophets, and then Ismail being the Muslim prophet. They're all prophets of Islam, and they're all sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What some of their followers did with their teachings after that is another issue, but the prophets themselves, munazzahun an ayyi naqs, right? The prophets themselves, we do not attribute to them any fallibility or any sort of shortcoming or failing or deficiency or anything like that. Though their people afterwards, their qawm, انحرفوا ويحرفوا, right? They may have gone astray and they may have manipulated their teachings and so forth. And keep in mind that the Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula, they manipulated the teachings of Ibrahim alayhi salam to the degree that they thought idol worship was something representative of his teachings. So that's something to keep in mind. So Luqman alayhi salam, the son of Ba'ura, and it said that he was the nephew of Ayub alayhi salam, who was a prophet, or like the son, it says Ibn Khalatihi, or the son of the aunt of Ayub. So that would be like a second cousin. So Allahu A'lam, which if he's a nephew or like a second cousin, but some qaraba, some sort of relationship, familiar relationship with Ayub. And as we've seen before, that was not something uncommon amongst many of the Anbiya of Bani Israel. Sayyidina Yahya and Isa, so John and Jesus alayhi salam were related. And also Lut was a contemporary of Ibrahim, and also there was some sort of relationship, familiar relationship there. And obviously Musa and Harun, Moses and Aaron were brothers. Allahu A'lam. So Luqman, according to most of the Mufassirun, was not a prophet himself. Some of the dissenting opinions mentioned that they believed he was a prophet, but usually he's referred to as Luqman al-Hakim, or Luqman the Wise. And Luqman is said to have been of dark skin, black skin color, and was actually a slave at one point, as is mentioned in the Tafseer, alayhi salam. So, but he was given wisdom, and it's said that he studied with the prophets, and he spent time, he lived many, many years. As we know, people back in those times lived hundreds of years, if not more. So he lived during the time of Ayub, and he also lived during the time of David or Dawood, alayhi salam, and also learned from him. And it's said that he was the mufti, and he was the kind of the scholar of religion before Dawood was a prophet, and so then he would be the one to give ifta. He was older than Dawood, alayhi salam. And so then when Dawood, his prophecy or his prophethood was confirmed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he stopped giving fatwa, and he said, why should I continue to do so when this burden has been lifted from me and has been given to a prophet? Wallahu a'lam. And it's narrated that Ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, سمعت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول لم يكن لقمان نبيا ولكن كان عبدا كثير التفكر حسن اليقين أحب الله فأحبه فمن عليه بالحكمة. He said that I heard the Prophet ﷺ say that he was not a prophet, Luqman, but he was a slave, but he was كثير التفكر. He had much contemplation, and he had good certitude and certainty in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أحب الله فأحبه. He loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so then Allah loved him. فمن عليه بالحكمة. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala graced him with wisdom. Graced him with wisdom. So Luqman then, it is said, had this hiwar, had this conversation with his son, who was asking him some questions about the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he even said, does Allah really see everything that we do? What if I went to some place under a rock? Would Allah still see that? And so this is the hiwar, or the dialogue or the discourse that he had with his son, the son of Luqman. So وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ أَنْ يَشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. So in the translation, we endowed Luqman with wisdom by saying to him, be thankful to God, أَنْ يَشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ, and whoever gives thanks benefits his own soul. And as for those who are thankless, God is self-sufficient, غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ, worthy of all praise. Luqman counseled his son. He said, my son, do not attribute any partners to God. Attributing partners to him is a terrible wrong. So the first thing that Luqman Hakim alayhi salam said to his son, and the first thing that was mentioned as part of wisdom, actually, first to Luqman, and yashkur lillah, وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. So to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have seen this theme before throughout the Quran, this relationship between shukr and iman, the relationship between gratitude and receiving Allah's grace and seeing it as graciousness, grace from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not something that is deserved in a sense. And this is the key, we can say, that opens the doors of iman and certitude, right? Which is having a higher degree of iman by having a higher degree of certainty in the wa'ad and the wa'id, right? The promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of paradise and ease and facilitation and so forth, and giving the threat its due, which we call it wa'id, that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also speaks about in terms of hellfire and what may happen to one if they fail to heed the warnings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we call that wa'id, ulama call that wa'id. So the threat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may has every right to carry out, but may not do so. And then the wa'ad, which is the promise, which we believe if it's a wa'ad and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised it, then we believe that it's going to happen. It's waqa', it will come. And what we have to do is heed the warnings and heed the admonitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as He conveys in the Quran, and obviously as He conveys via His prophets, and particularly our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So shukr then is the key. So having gratitude. And there is different types of shukr. Sometimes they say that shukr in Arabic, gratitude, is shukr al-qalb wal-hamdu bil-lisan. So hamd is to thank Allah by stating it with one's tongue, saying alhamdulillah, right? So praising Allah by acknowledging that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that we have to be thankful to. And then shukr bil-qalb, so the thankfulness or the gratitude of the heart. And the gratitude of the heart is multifaceted. So one aspect of gratitude of the heart is knowing that you can't really properly give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala His due in terms of your gratitude. So like if we're dealing with human relationships and someone does you a favor, you usually think, okay, if I return the favor in a similar manner, I have, addayta haqqahu, I have given him his right in terms of how I can be grateful, and then we feel like we're even now. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're never going to be even, right? No matter what you do, all that Allah has given you is immeasurable, and you have nothing in your possession, nothing that at your disposal that you can possibly, even if you give everything that you have and all that you are, well, Allah gave you all that you are. So how could you possibly تؤدي حقه, how can you give Allah His right back? So it's not about seeking to level the scale, as it were, and give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the same as He gave you. So part of shukr of the qalb then is this realization that you can't properly thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We mentioned in one of the previous sessions Sayyidina Dawood, who was at least a contemporary of Luqman for some time. He said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that every time I thank you, I realize that I have to have a new shukr, right? Shukr mutajaddid. Because me thanking you also, I should be thankful for that you gave me the ability to thank you. And he said that then I think, well, that also needs a shukr. So it's kind of like a, cascading sort of shukr, and you never get to, it's infinite. And he said, tahayyart, and I'm bewildered by this. What should I do, Ya Allah? And Allah said, Ya Dawood, al-ana shakartani. He said, Dawood, now you have properly thanked me. So similar to what the Prophet ﷺ used to say in his dua, لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك. I cannot properly thank you or praise you. You are to be praised as you praise yourself. So realizing that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the ability to properly praise Himself. That's why it ended the verse, إن الله غني حميد فإن الله غني حميد ومن يشكر فإنما يشكر نفسه ومن كفر يعني كفران النعمة, so one who doesn't understand the shukr and doesn't acknowledge that it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like we saw in the previous session, like Qarun, who said, إِنَّمْ أُوتِيتُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي, I have gotten this because of my knowledge, so there was no shukr there, no gratitude. This is kufran and kufr. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ, and whoever turns the other way, إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِي, in other words, he's not in need of anyone to thank him. It's not because he needs that. Right? غني means self-sufficient. نحن الفقراء وهو الغني. We are the ones who are in complete need of everything, and he is the Ghani. Hamid. So even whether people thank him or not thank him, he is still Hamid, the one who is worthy of being praised. So if no one on the face of the planet were to thank him, such as the time of perhaps Ibrahim alayhi salam, when there were no followers of him except maybe his family members, that's why he was called an ummah by himself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still Hamid. He's still the one worthy of being praised by everyone, even if they fail to do so. So, وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. Right? So whoever shows proper gratitude, then it's not because Allah needs it, but you're actually doing yourself the service. You're doing yourself a favor by acknowledging and putting things in its proper place. That's why this is called hikmah. Right? What is wisdom? They define wisdom as putting things in their proper place. Right? When to step forward, when to step back, when to say something, when not to say something. In other words, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an ordered universe, right? We look into the celestial realm and you see there's an order there. Perhaps at first glance, you look up there and maybe you see just lights and stars and it looks jumbled and you can't make anything out of it. But there's an order there if you take a closer look. And people, when they first approach the Quran and they look at it, and it's not like any other book, right? It doesn't have like a beginning and a middle and an end. And it's unlike the Bible that also has kind of a chronological order. So the first book of the Bible is Genesis, creation of the world. We don't have that in the Quran. So people may approach it and say, I don't understand how to read this. I can't make sense of it. And many were the Orientalists and people unfamiliar with Islamic tradition and especially Arabic language who kind of made those comments. But once you get into it and you delve into it and you let your heart open up to it, because that's the way the Quran is. If you come to it with a full cup, you're not going to get anything out of it. But if you come to it with your cup empty and you're ready to receive, then that cup will be filled, and it will be filled, and it will be filled. And every time you go back to it, it will be filled once again and continue to be filled. As mentioned in the hadith, the rahil al-murtahal, the one that moves and then comes back. So it's like you're on a consistent journey and trip with the ma'ani of the Quran, with the meanings of the Quran. So every time you go back to it, you may infer something else new, maybe put into your heart by the beautiful meanings that will come out via its contemplation and tafakkur. And this is true even for someone who understands the language or doesn't understand the language. Don't think if you don't understand the language completely that it's kind of futile and what are you going to understand? No, the words themselves are penetrative, and they keep in mind these are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And keep in mind, these are the same words that the Prophet ﷺ spoke and recited every day of his life and taught to other people. And so, we say, make istihdar of هذه الحقيقة. Bring to the front or the present that these are the words of God and also the words that were echoed continuously by our Prophet ﷺ, and then transmitted to the Prophet ﷺ, and then taught to the Sahaba, the companions, and the generations after them, and after them, and after them. This is our link, right? This is our sanad, our chain of transmission, our urwat al-wuthqa, our sabil, our habl al-mateen, all those things that we hold steadfast onto, that connects us with all the other great members and beautiful members of this ummah, and specifically our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you're thinking about these things, even if you're reading and you don't understand everything or a little bit or nothing at all, it will still, inshallah, give you a benefit. Maybe not the same benefit as someone who understands it, can contemplate it, but nevertheless, it will still give you a benefit. So I think I would recommend, even if one is reading in translation, that's fine. But also don't neglect reading the Arabic, because it is, we say it's al-mu'abbad نتعبد بتلاوته. So it's an act of worship to make tilawa, right? Which is to recite it. And tilawa min tilwa, واحد تلو الأخرى, so one after the other. So it means like recitation that's continuous. You really have to dedicate and delve into it. And the Quran, since it's the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the object, not the object, but the sole focus of our ibadah and of our hopes and our dreams and aspirations. So the Quran also is tawheedic like that too. So the Quran doesn't like us to mix other words with it. So if the words of the Quran, even if you don't understand, are not penetrative, then you have to think about, well, what other words am I letting come into my heart, right? What other speech and discourse is coming into my heart? And if there's a lot of nonsense there, then that is not the most pristine form of Tawheed. Tawheed is to reject all except the one who is the focus of your unification or unicity, or the one that you see as one and none other. And that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Quran is reflective of the attribute of God, of His speech, right? This is kalamullah. This is not something created. It's the words have been revealed. So that means the meanings were always there, and they're timeless, and they are as pre-eternal as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. So that means it has the sifa of tawheed, right, of oneness. And oneness means I don't let other things enter into my heart at the same time, and then I let them try to compete with the words of the Quran. The Quran will not have the same effect upon you. Before I do that, that's why they recommend people should dedicate themselves to some forms of dhikr, some sorts of remembrance of Allah that will cleanse, purify kind of the mess we have going inside our hearts and in our our paradigms of thinking. And they often mention kalimat tawheed is very effective for this, la ilaha illallah. So people should have a kind of a therapeutic recitation of la ilaha illallah that will help towards this. And some of them even said, some of the mashayikh also said al-lafz al-mufrad, which is just to say Allah, Allah, Allah. And this is mentioned in the Quran too. قُلِ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ ذَرْهُمْ فِي خَوْضِهِمْ يَلْعَبُونَ. Say Allah, then leave them to their frivolous play. So lafz al-jalala then has this power by itself to remove trivial things from your heart and frivolous things that you want to kind of expunge from the fore of your spiritual psyche and of your thinking and so forth. Then after that, you will find the Quran will be much, much more penetrative, penetrating, inshallah. So shukr then, as is mentioned in the verse, this is kind of the primordial or cardinal virtue that will open many, many doors. And it's also one of the most sustaining maqams to keep you kind of in a sustainable and focused realm of remembrance and of ibadah and so forth. Sabr, for example, patience, forbearance. Usually most of us, we only have so much and we run out, right? We say, I'm running out of patience. So we're able to kind of put up with certain things and suffer the bitterness of things, as it were, for a while. And for most of us, that can't go too long. After a while, we may get getting tired. So unless it then kind of blooms into shukr, which is gratitude, then it's difficult to sustain patience. So in order to maintain your sustainability of your ibadah and your optimism in God and so forth, it has to be tempered also, and I would even say delved into shukr, forbearance, because with shukr the bitterness subsides. So even if you're in a difficult situation, but then you see the silver linings of it and you see the wisdom behind it, and then you become grateful of having this opportunity to be raised in degrees with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that is much more sustainable than trying to suffer through things via the bitterness of sabr. And that's why the ulama, they say that shukr a'la min as-sabr, and the shukr is awwal maqamat al-arifin aw al-awliya. That shukr is the first maqam of the awliya and of the arifin, because sabr is kind of, okay, it's bitter, I don't like it, but okay, I'm going to take care of it, I'll suffer through it. That's why we find in the verse in the Quran, وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الصَّابِرُونَ, right? وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا, like idfa السَّيِّئَةَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ, repel the sayyi'ah with the hasana. And then who are the ones who kind of get that point and then are patient enough to get out on the other end? As-sabirun, right? The ones who show patience and forbearance. And the ones who are dealt with the musibah, with the calamity, also the patient and forbearant. But then what is the expectation on the other side? How do I get out of this? The other side is shukr. The other side is gratitude. And then ar-rida, right? And then contentment with all that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts your way, like mentioned in hadith, عَجَبًا لِلْمُؤْمِنِ أَمْرُهُ كُلُّهُ خَيْرٌ. How bewildering for the believer, all of his affair is good. Because they are powering through it, as it were, with shukr, with gratitude. So that's the first thing that's mentioned here. The hikmah, al-ra's al-hikmah here, beginning with أَنَشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. And then Luqman says to his son, وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ, and he is admonishing him, يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. Do not associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the shirk here that is mentioned could be both types of shirk, which is a shirk al-khafi wa shirk al-jali. A shirk al-jali, or outward shirk, is the shirk of ibadah and tawheed, which is to actively worship and take as a partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is dhulmun azim, right? This is a great dhulm, or a terrible wrong. And likely the son of Luqman al-Hakim was not a mushrik or even close to shirk, but Sayyidina Luqman might have been referring to a shirk also al-khafi, which is the hidden or more subtle shirk, which is the shirk not of ibadah, but the shirk of shukr, for example, or of sabr, or of rida. In other words, to associate others in how you focus your gratitude, or how you focus your patience, or how you focus your contentment, or looking to others to validate you in terms of your place of gratitude, or your place of forbearance, and so forth. So that's dhulm azim. Wahidillah, right? In everything. Make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala one in all things, so He is the focus of your shukr. Yes, thanking people, as the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man lam yashkur nas lam yashkurillah." Whoever doesn't thank people hasn't really thanked Allah, but that's a function of your shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So not at the exclusion of God, but via the soul channel and prism towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the shukr, right? And that's the tawheed, and that's the sabr, and that's all those things. So one then has to also avoid that shukr and put one's aspirations and hopes in anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِلَّا هُوَ ظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ, ظُلْمٌ النَّفْسِ, right? Then that's a type of doing a terrible wrong. To whom? Not really to the universe. The universe doesn't really care about what you do or you don't do, and certainly not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't wrong Allah, we can't wrong Him. So who are you wronging at the end? You're wronging yourself. So ظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ لِنَفْسِكَ. Just like مَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرْ لِنَفْسِهِ. Whoever is thankful is doing it for himself, ultimately, for their soul, that is. And whoever is doing the dhulm of shirk is also only really affecting themselves. Then there's two verses that come here that come in between the admonitions that Luqman gave to his son. And they deal with filial piety, or dealing with the parents. وهو قوله تعالى ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وهنا على وهن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك بي ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما وصاحبهما في الدنيا معروفا واتبع سبيل من أناب إلي ثم إلي مرجعكم فأنبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. We have commanded people to be good to their parents. Their mothers carry them with strain upon strain, and it takes 2 years to wean them. Give thanks to me and your parents, all will return to me. If they strive to make you associate with me anything about which you have no knowledge, then do not obey them. Yet keep their company in this life according to what is right, and follow the path of those who turn to me. You will all return to me in the end, and I will tell you everything what you have done. فَأُنَبِّئُكُم بِمَا كُنتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. In other words, the repercussions of what you have done and how it will affect you in the next life. So this wasiyah to the parents, there's also similar verses in Surah Al-Ankabut, which is a few surahs before this, and also Surah Al-Isra. And whenever you see the phrase وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, I think also in Surah An-Nisa. So this is something, it is considered actually one of the 10 deadly sins is not to have filial piety, or عقوق الوالدين. So it's considered from the kaba'ir. ومن أكبر الكبائر عقوق الوالدين, is to be recalcitrant and not show parents what they are due. And this subject, I know it often comes about with many people, and they think about it in the context, well, how do I deal with parents who might prove difficult or don't let me do what I want in my life, and this sort of thing. The sabab nuzul of this verse is mentioned in some of the tafsir that Sa'd ibn Waqqas, that when he became Muslim, one of the great Sahaba, his mother said, she refused to eat. She said, I refuse to eat until you leave Islam. And so the Sa'd ibn Waqqas went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, what do I do? My mom is on a hunger strike because I've come to the deen, but at the same time, this is my mother. And so, نزلت الآية. So this verse was revealed here, and also Surah Al-Ankabut, the same sabab al-nuzul. And وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَى أَنْ تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. Right? And if they try to coerce you or have you associate partners with that which is not of knowledge, so something that is not true, that is not the reality, فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا, then do not obey them. And so the general principle is لَا طَاعَةَ لِمَخْلُوقٍ فِي مَعْصِيَةِ الْخَالِقِ. There is no obedience to anyone, parent or otherwise, if it results in disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so more specifically, the mashayikh, they said, هذا في المحرمات وفي الواجبات. So these are things that are in haram and that are obligatory. So if your parents try to coerce you to drop something that's obligatory in the deen, so maybe not even shirk, but obligatory, you can't follow them in that. And if they try to coerce you to do something that is haram, then also you can't do that. But as for things that don't fall in the haram and don't fall in the wajib, then there's a little bit more flexibility. So if they don't want you to, hang out with a particular group of people, and you don't see that it is from the wajib of the deen. Like if they say, I don't want you going to this teacher, I don't want you learning these durus, or I don't want you watching on the YouTube this guy talking about Surah Luqman or something like that. If we consider that it's not from the wajibat, in other words, not from something obligatory, then that's something we can be more flexible with. But if we consider from the obligatory, so if I'm learning my deen, and deen can mean learning how to pray, and it can also mean learning how to rid oneself of one's bad habits and how to have good character and so forth. So they said, Mashayikh al-Tarbiyah, so the Shuyukh of Tarbiyah, those who are inculcating Tarbiyah and Adab within their students, this is a darura, this is a wajib. And Imam Abu Hassan al-Shadili, he said, من لم يتغلغل في علومنا هذا أو في أمرنا هذا فمات مصرا على المعصية. He said, whoever doesn't, get involved and go deep into tazkiyat an-nafs, purification of the soul, and they don't want to do that, ماتوا مصرا على المعصية. It's like they will die insisting upon doing sins, upon sinning, which is a kabira. Right, which is a major sin, al-israr al-ma'siyah kabira. So we consider those things to be obligatory. So things that are obligatory or things that are clearly haram, we don't follow. So how do we deal with parents or anyone otherwise when we have to do these things? Well, the next verse shows us. فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. So notice how don't follow them, but at the same time give them good companionship. وَصَاحِبْهُمَا, treat them well, في الدنيا معروفة, with the ma'ruf. So even though they might try to get you to do something that's not right, it's not an excuse to abuse them. Other verses in the Quran said, وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. Right? Don't say uff to them. Don't say a word that would indicate you're exasperated with them, because that's probably the best way I translate it. It's like a sigh of exasperation. It's like, oof, here we go again. Don't even do that. And that's like the minimum, right? So anything even worse than that should also be avoided. وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا, and don't revile them, right? Don't abuse them, don't revile them, obviously don't strike them physically. And this is a musibah that we have, a calamity in many communities now. وَقُلْ لَهُمَا قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا, and here وَصَاحِبُهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا, right? And still give them the ma'ruf. So one of my teachers once said, whatever you do, you just want to try to make them smile, right? So if that means, and here we're talking that you're an adult now, not a child. You're an adult and you have adult parents, and in some cultural traditions, the parents still are heavily involved in the children's life. They could be 45 or 50 years of age, but if the parents are still around, they're still kind of going to be involved. So there has to be some delicacy and some gentleness in that. And so keep them smiling. If that means they don't need to know every little single detail or facet about your life, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's fine too, as long as you keep them pleased and you pray for them. And the minimum of bir is that you pray for them, and you should actually do it after every one of the 5 prayers. You should make it a habit that you have, of making istighfar for your parents. كما ربياني صغيرا, as mentioned in the Quran. واغفرهما وارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. So Allah forgive them and have mercy upon them in the same way that ربياني صغيرا, and this is what the verse is mentioning. So وصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وهنا على وهن. Right, we told the human being to be good to their parents. His mother, وهنا على وهن, just one difficulty after the other. So the morning sickness in the first trimester, and then the baby gets heavier, and then kicking, and then the contractions, and then staying up at night, and then the baby's actually the trauma, I guess, as it is, of childbirth itself, which is not easy, and the contractions that preceded, and then the birth of the baby, and then the nursing of the baby, and then keeping up at night. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is a hikmah in that He made it that way, that through these sorts of difficulties, and especially this particular burden is specifically on the woman more than the man. And that's why it's called al-walidain. There's 2 words you can use to describe the parents, al-abawan or al-walidan. So walada, walid, means the one that gave birth to you. So here, when we say walidain, the primary is the mother and the secondary is the father. Primary is the mother, secondary is the father. So that means the man, the husband, is not really the walid, but only as much in relationship to the mother. He didn't give birth, right? But he contributed, obviously, to the wife giving birth. But the primary consideration here, based upon the name that is used, is walid. What about al-abawan? Where do we find this in the Quran? Fi ayat al-mawarith, right? So in the verses dealing with inheritance, the primary is the abba, right? Because abawan means 2 fathers, but not in the 2020 cultural context, but the father and the mother, and you find this type of jama' or this type of tathniya in Arabic a lot. So it means taghlib ahad az-zawjayn al-akhar. So it means that you name something, they're pairs, but you name something that has more of the dominant quality, and they both take the same name. So walidan because of the birth, abawan because of the father. So in inheritance law, usually the estate, in terms of the major part of the estate, is going to be passed from in terms of the fathers. Yes, people inherit from their mothers as well, but we find in ayat al-mawarith, it's generally referring to al-abawain, and that's the word we find in the verses in Surah An-Nisa. And as I said, we find this in Arabic a lot, like al-qamaran, the 2 moons. So it's not 2 moons, it means the sun and the moon. Al-umaran, right? The Prophet ﷺ they used to refer to the umaran, the 2 umars, as Abu Bakr and Umar, actually. So one is Umar and one is not Umar, but use one over the other. So here walidain means the primary is the mother. That's why the filial piety is more emphasized towards the mother than the father. Both are deserving of it, but the mother, generally we say, has the greater emphasis, perhaps the greater share of that, because of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described in this verse. وَصَيْنَا الْإِنسَانِ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ وَفِصَالُهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ, right? And the weaning within 2 years, and this is kind of the belief for that nursing the baby should be within 2 years, and that the nasab or the ukhuwa bil-rida'a, so for people to be considered brothers and sisters because of nursing, it has to be in infancy, which is in the first 2 years of life. Anashkur li wali walidayk. Right here, go back to the shukr, the gratitude for Allah, wali walidayk. So when you thank the parents, it's like thanking Allah. Ilayya al-masir. In other words, be careful because there's going to be a reckoning. Everything is coming back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then in jahadaka an tushrika bi ma laysa laka bihi ilm fala tuti'huma. We don't follow in that which is ma'siyat al-khaliq. واتبع, and then after all of that, وصاحبهم في الدنيا معروفة واتبع سبيل من أناب إلي ثم إلي مرجعكم فأنبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. And as M.A.S. Halim says, translates, you will all return to me. Yet keep their company in this life going to what is right and follow the path of those who turn to me. Al-Munibin, right? Which also is the meaning of At-Ta'ibin, At-Ta'ibun. Those who consistently return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will all return to me in the end, and I will tell you everything that you have done. So I was hoping to get to the rest of the verses that have some of the akhlaq and the adab, but we're out of time. So for another time, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. So we'll stop here. جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم. أسعد الله فطوركم وأسعد الله أوقاتكم وجعل في أوقاتكم وفي أعماركم وفي بيوتكم البركة والمدد والنفحات وأن يجعل هذا الشهر مباركا ويعني مليئا بالغفران وبالرحمات ونزول الرحمات ويجعل ختامه عتقا من النار جميعا إن شاء الله. بارك الله فيكم وأحسن الله إليكم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.